what the bio-individual philosophy is, or what our channel is about. I'm going to talk about what it is. Bio-individual philosophy based on the great truths of the great men. Buddha, Nietzsche, Darwin. We acknowledge that words in education are not enough, and that physiology is the prime mover. Physiology is the key. Words, concepts, and education just not enough. This is the path, and it is fraught with danger. You'll hit certain points where it gets a little bit tenuous, and when you look up, it can be intimidating. The key is to stick to the method. When we get to the top, we see the perspective. We missed the forest for the trees. This is what you get. You get to view your reactivity from up high. You have more free will to choose the ultimate view. And this is what we're really after.
But it's very psychophysical to me. I think I just think of Spengler. That's why I got interested in him. He's so psychophysical. It's like this idea of what you like when I first read it. What do you mean the maths comes out of the people in this place? You know, people running around the place in the forest. You know, like this is the image I had in my head when reading it. And then that's how their maths came. What? You know, it's really psychophysical way of thinking. And so I like that. And so the path is something, you know, Westerners use this metaphor, but I think that's where it comes from. I think it really, a lot of the time, it's coming from the influx or the knowledge of Chinese ideas. But there's perfectly Western Faustian ways to use that metaphor. You know, as we're saying, like Nietzsche walking mountain paths and thinking of it's not quite a path, but he has the metaphor of the rope, you know, the rope over the abyss, you know, the man on one side and Superman on the other, or whatever, however he says it. So I mean, like crossing the tightrope is a path. So it's just not a winding path. So I mean, there's you're already got a westernized Faustian version of it. So yeah, but anyway, so when somebody comes onto YouTube and criticizes the metaphor you're using, it's a metaphor, and they could have a completely different understanding of it than you using it to. It depends. Like metaphors last, they only last a little bit before they start breaking down. So some internet guy will always notice where the metaphor breaks down and jump in to tell you actually. Whereas you have to use these things they're just tools for try point out
message
experiences or something. So anyway, there's this week's Spengler rant.
No, I think that's good because it ties in with what we're going to talk about, which is something that you wanted to talk about, which is the idea of self-transcendence, which may or may not include metaphors like a path, I would imagine. So we're going to have to be careful. We're walking on eggshells here. But why did you want to talk about it? Because you did bring it up. So I thought maybe there was something that happened during the week that made you think about it, or something.
No, actually, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's
my
your
fault.
Because
no,
because I saw your URL of your website is incongruent with the name of your website. And in your name it says Islands of Transcendence, which is a nice name. That's your old URL,
good,
but you've since changed the name of the blog itself to Breath Wish blog, which is cool. So I like them both. So anyway, so I was thinking about transcendence, and then I remembered, and we've been talking about recently about enlightenment and awakening and those the problems with those terms. And then I remember, and we've also talked about Christopher Hyatt and his work. And I remember Christopher Hyatt said somewhere that about he doesn't like the word enlightenment. It's in a video where he's teaching techniques that are in that kind of category of spiritual growth, let's call it. But he says he doesn't like the word enlightenment because he doesn't know what it means. It's too abstract. But he prefers the word transcendence because he knows what it means. So it just means going beyond to transcend. And so I was thinking about that, and I'd been reading bits of Faust, the play, and he's trying to transcend all the time. And in the translation I was reading, they use the word transcend and transcendence. I can't remember it as self-transcendence or not, or is that just somebody a critic talking about it. I don't remember if it's actually in the play or not.
Hmm.
But and that does describe like Faust's kind of mentality, and this is where Spengler gets the whole the metaphor of Faustian civilization from. That he's never happy. He's wanting to move to the next thing. He's always striving for more, to be greater, to break the limits, to reach as far as possible, and not be happy with that, and then reach the next thing and not be happy with that. So this isn't quite a path. It's different, not the same as a path. So, so I've been thinking about that, and I think, and also I just for myself, I've been looking for a word to describe this kind of work, that part of this work. So there's the practical side of the work, and then there's the quote spiritual growth side of the work. And I hate the E word, and I don't like the A word, awakening, because of
Sounds dumb.
Spengler. Actually, it's
Oh,
Spengler's fault.
Spengler. Really?
Yes, because he's saying, like the Indian civilization is the central concept is life is a dream. If you read the Indian stuff, this makes immediate sense. Life is a dream, and the goal is to
wake up.
Yeah. So it's awakening. So it makes perfect sense in that context, because that's the metaphor, and there's also, and the word enlightenment, I know it has different uses, but it's more suited to the Magian civilization in Spengler's thing. The life is the universe is a cavern. It's like a cave, and the original churches in the part of the world I'm in, the Mediterranean, and then the Arabic countries as well. Old churches used to be like caves in the ground and stuff. Like there's a cave where I live. There's actually a cave. There's a cave church. You go down into the caves. Totally different. But this is like Christian. Totally different from a church in the north of Scotland. It's like not the same religion. I know it's the same book, blah blah blah. But so that's a different metaphor. So enlightenment makes more sense for that civilization, because it's like you're in a cave and then it's dark. Humans are in darkness, and then they get lit up by the divine, or they have see the truth about reality, however you want to say it. But for Westerners, I think the transcendence is the best word, or transcending, because that's the kind of Western striving, always seeking the next thing and expanding out. There's problems with this. There's a dark side to this, obviously. But so that's the reason I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to see what you thought about this as a way of framing it, since you are the one with it in your URL. And then obviously I thought about, well, the word transcendence. Part of this, the first part of that word is a word that's used a lot in culture wars at the moment, and has certain meanings. And they're not, when we're talking about self-transcendence, we're not talking about that, but it's not actually unrelated in a weird way. There's a connection in a very weird way, but we'll have to get to that later. So like it'd be better first to talk about self-transcendence. So if transcendence is going beyond, self-transcendence is going beyond yourself. So like or Nietzsche, self-overcoming. It's the same thing he's talking about. It's you're breaking free of the limits of the current concept or you have of yourself. So most people don't have I don't think people have an explicit definition of their self. They just it's kind of implicit, and when you see it clearly, to step back, definitions are limitations. That's what they're for. Like you define something, you're limiting it. This is that. You're giving something a definition to say what it is, in opposition to everything else. It's not those other things, it's this thing. So everyone has that about themselves, but it's kind of unconscious or just playing out in their life. And if you do kind of work with meditation or other kind of work, sometimes you get a point where you just have this aha moment where you see through your current definition of self, which was a limitation. And in that moment, you will transcend that old self and you can't go back to it because you've seen through it. It's not like you can become aware of your current concept of self and then just keep it, but the very act of seeing how you actually think of yourself means you transcend that version of yourself, and then something else appears. Doesn't mean it's true. It just means that you've transcended the old limited concept of self, and now you have a less limited concept of yourself, again, to be transcended again. So this is like a process. So when people I think people get mixed up with transcendence and because they think of the transcendent, which is, like a totally separate from all kind of reality you could experience or know, totally outside of it. And it's almost like static. It's this thing on the outside. So people might go to self-transcendence, it's you're reaching that thing. That's not what it means. It's more like a process. It's maybe better to call it self-transcending. And then people can argue about if it ends or if it doesn't. The Faustian mentality would be it never ends. You just keep doing it. Maybe the Indian one would be more there is an end, because you've woken up from the dream. So, yeah. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and how it ties in with all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting you say that there's a cultural difference for thinking that it ends somewhere, which in many ways kind of differentiates us, doesn't it, from probably your average person into religion or esotericism or whatever you want to call it. Is because we're not really searching for an end. I'm certainly not. I don't really think there is an end in the way people think of an end, particularly guys that are into Eastern religions, and you have like very flowery descriptions of things like you'll disappear into the ether and the devas will come down, and I don't know. I'm sure there's all sorts of weird stuff. So yeah, I think that several things can be true at once, and I also think that you could have awakening. Again, a word I don't like either. I don't like enlightenment or awakening, but I just don't really know any other words. But it's kind of like that old Zen saying, isn't it? That before enlightenment, chopping wood, gathering water. After enlightenment, chopping wood, gathering water. The implication in Eastern religions in particular is that just ceases or something, and there's some super spiritual event that will occur and you'll just disappear, or you know what I mean? There's this kind of implication that something finishes for good. And I don't believe that personally. I agree with you. I think it just keeps going. The stream of experience just keeps going, presumably until we die. I don't know what happens after that. But your relationship with it can change. I think that's true. But it doesn't mean everything else stops. I have a problem with people who think things stop. It could stop, I guess, if you want to go and, as you say, live in a cave in your underpants. That's a way of stopping it, I guess. But it's not like you disappear, not in a greater sense of you. So I was thinking about it since you brought it all up, and I kind of see that there's three types of self-transcendence, what I'd call self-transcendence. So there's the self-overcoming of nihilism, which is a good book by Keiji Nishitani, and I stole this from that title, which I think is something that many Westerners go through necessarily. The lack of meaning and all the other things that go along with nihilism. It's a big issue, obviously, because you see people on the merry-go-round of religions and converting to Orthodoxy every 3 years and heading back to Catholicism. And then, you got to have children, don't have it never ends. People trying to find meaning in some way. And so we all go through that process, some successfully, others not. So I think for all of us, there's the self-overcoming of that meaninglessness that we're subjected to because of Faustian excess, I guess, in your frame of looking at things. And it reminds me of the expression that I think it was Nietzsche, how he said that man is a creative and joyous fool. I think he says that he creates meaning and then he forgets that he does it. So yeah, I like the idea that it never ends, and I've seen no evidence for it ending, and I've also seen no evidence for absolute metaphysical or philosophical meanings, like being anywhere in particular. So we get to that point, and then we figure out we're going to do something. So we need to make ourselves into a work of art or whatever else. And I guess, you know, that's it seems quite pedestrian, but that's self-overcoming in an everyday sense. So if you go to the gym and, you know, or go to university to get more educated and to get more money or whatever it is in a very tangible sense, I think, you know, that's self-overcoming, making yourself into a work of art, which, you know, is related to the self-overcoming of nihilism. The kind of can be related. So that process never ends. Clearly not. For people who are involved in it, there's always something to get better at. There's always something in yourself to overcome and transcend your current matrix or abilities, you know? So that's an obvious one. And then the other one for me is seeing through the self, seeing that actually all of those things are kind of not really happening in the way that you think they are. And seeing the self and that everything seen are the one thing, and that the acculturated self is kind of falls away. And that, in a sense, is also nothingness. If you think about it, it's like acknowledging emptiness or nothingness. But what's weird is I think that people get confused because they think that all these things can't be true at the same time. But I think they absolutely can be true at the same time. I think that from an ultimate level, so when you get into the meditation and the more Eastern way of looking at things, you see that everything does have an emptiness or a kind of sameness, that stream of experience has a sameness, and that even the things that you think are great or ugly or beautiful all kind of become a part of this whole that can't be split, this stream of everythingness that is also nothingness at the same time. So that's from that perspective. But clearly you can go to the gym and get bigger and things can happen in the real world. So I don't see it as a paradox in a experience. So when you do all these things, I don't think there's any paradox about it. Even a really learned Buddhist monk that has achievements that are impressive in meditation, they the ones I know still have jobs and they still have careers and families. That doesn't stop. So I almost see those more ultimate perspectives as, I think that they're ultimately true, and it doesn't really matter because you just keep going on anyway, and you can still be in that space. Nothing stops. So I feel like those are the different levels of transcendence for me. That's what I think self-transcendence is. And of course, in a Western context, since that's what we're talking about, you mentioned Descartes, and yeah, I agree. I think that he represented that real excess of detachment from sensation and everything else. And it's not a bad thing, as you say. It's why we had science and technology and all these things went the way they did. And that's a very top down way of looking at the human brain and the consciousness and the body. So it's kind of like, I am abstraction. That's what I am. I exist as an abstraction. I think, therefore I am. Thought is the thing that is making everything else. I think that self-transcendence in a Western context, the more I think about it, is flipping that script while not completely getting rid of it. And what I mean by that is it's realizing that the top-down approach, so just I think, therefore I'm a thing, therefore I am, is only one very small part of the whole equation. And that you want to flip it, so you instead of going top down in that way, you're going bottom up. So what I mean by that is you become familiar with your sensations and your body, and your instincts and all those various things that we have that are not thinking, they're not thought, and becoming aware of them, because Westerners are not aware of them, because we're not acculturated to be aware of them, because we are very abstract as a culture. And I think, at least in the world as it is at the moment, it's a terrible, debilitating illness. And I would like to think that a feature of self-overcoming is overcoming that acculturated tendency. And that includes getting to know your body, getting to know that your thought isn't actually what you are. It's an element of it, but it's definitely not all of it, not by any stretch. And taking a bottom-up approach. And it doesn't mean throwing out abstracting at all. It doesn't mean throwing out any of these things. I see it more as an integration of all these various drives and things that we are as human beings in an environment, as an organism in an environment. So for me, in a Western frame, that's what I consider to be probably the foremost required self-overcoming, because I do feel like that outlook, and I'm no great reader of Descartes. This is just what I pick up secondhand. That I think that is a problem. It's an excess, and it means that we are detached from like a whole part of our being. Just a massive part of our being. We're completely detached from it. And that is something to be overcome. So from a certain angle, you could say that is self-overcoming. And I think that the bio-individual frame is kind of that. That's kind of what we're doing. We're looking at the body, we're looking at the breath, we're looking at the nervous system, how all these things interconnect, because we realize that the thought that comes up is very much a result of everything else that's going on underneath. And the approach of mastering all those things is very important for self-overcoming, because as we know, you can't abstract your way into being something different, or at least, not significantly. So those are my thoughts on self-overcoming. I kind of think there's three types, or there's three levels, and even though the ultimate level seems incongruent with just the everyday go to the gym or do yoga or get richer, whatever it is, I don't think it is incongruent. And it's kind of, I don't know if that comes across as too confused. I mean, I'm kind of thinking on my feet a little bit here, but
yeah, I think everyone
yeah,
has everyone has like the urge to self-transcendence to some level. They just stop at different places when they do it. So like going to the gym is a type of self-transcendence. You're
yeah,
transcending the current body shape or composition or however you're thinking about it. Or if you're going to the gym, it's not necessarily that. You might be transcending your current poor state of relationships by going to the gym, so you're transcending something. It might not be the thing that it looks like you're transcending. You're the social benefits of being fitter, that kind of thing. So everyone has a version of it. So like, obviously being religious is like that's seeking for transcendence. Being a patriot of your country is transcendence. You're not going right up and out to God. You're going up as high as the nation. You're wanting to be like transcending. You're wanting to be part of something bigger than yourself. Normal sense, people do this, starting a family, creating something bigger than yourself. You're becoming more. You're going beyond what you were. There are different ways people can do this. Some are more, I would say, more healthy, and some are more sick, depending on how people do that, how they find the bigger thing. Sometimes it's just like a hobby, and they become a total obsessed over some tiny little niche thing to be the master in this niche because they want to transcend themselves by being the guy who knows the most about this obscure thing or does this obscure thing. It's like there's a desire to lose yourself in something bigger than you. This gets used against people, against their own best interest by people who know how to do it also as well. But I think everyone has that in them to some degree, even if it's like a unhealthy version, like you want to transcend your current state of awareness, so you get drunk. You're not actually transcending. It just feels like you are. You're trying to go beyond where you currently are, your feelings or whatever. So it can be healthy, unhealthy, good, bad, useful to other people, bad for other people, whatever. And I think it grows out of the sort of basic animalistic biological urge to seek things. So you're like for mammals anyway. Mammals are you're seeking food, you're seeking mates, you're seeking things around you. You're trying to avoid things. You're seeking bad things so that you can avoid them. You're always like looking around, foraging. There's that's like an actual emotional system in people's brains, in all mammals' brains, including humans. There's the neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp calls that the seeking system. So this is like built in. It's the lowest, oldest mammals' emotional system. There are parts in the brain that does this, certain chemicals that go with it, and then certain behaviors, and you can test these behaviors on the different animals. Usually rats. But anyway, so that's built into us as animals. So that seems to be when people are seeking transcendence or seeking mystical experiences, or just simply peak experiences or new feelings, or try to create things. Even just creating something is trying to transcend your current self into something bigger. There's now you, the artist, who created the thing. So I think that desire for seeking more is built into people on a very materialistic, biological level first. More food, more mates, whatever, or stuff. And then later that becomes sublimated into higher and higher things. So you're seeking information, you're seeking new unusual experiences, you're seeking new feelings, you're seeking information, you're seeking wisdom, you're seeking the experience of transcendent. So that's all very psychophysical to me. That's just like you were saying before, levels. So everyone there's certain levels where they're just happy to stop. I just want to transcend my bank balance and be rich. Some people, often when they get rich, they look for something else. If they're unhealthy, I would say, or the dark side of that, they just start seeking power with it in a bad way, or they could sometimes in helpful ways. But also you can sometimes they get the self-transcend in terms of that, and then there's something else they move on to. They have some other activity that's not about them. It's not about money because they have to feel that need to self-transcend somebody else. So I think everyone has this, even people who doesn't look like they have very much ambition. Ambition is a type of self-transcendence, that kind of inner feeling, or if you have a, when people, the phrase, if you have a calling or some kind of vocation or something you want to do, whether it's like an artist or a scientist or a entrepreneur or whatever it is, that kind of urge to do that's part of the self. That's an expression of this desire for self-transcendence, I think. And some people, it's just enlightenment, quote, that they're looking for. They just want, that's the thing, and it's the most important, biggest thing to them, and they're just not happy until they get that. They wouldn't be happy with any of the other things. So yeah, so I agree with the idea of there being levels. And in some ways, like the desire to self-transcend, it's connected with feeling like you're trapped in some kind of prison you need to break free from. So like either you're physically, the place you're in is limiting you. You want to transcend your geographical coordinates. To bring it back to Descartes, I think he's the coordinates is like the coordinates is on the way to making things more abstract and separate from the body. That whole way of thinking. Anyway, digression. So the idea of like you're wanting to break free, so that you're wanting to break free of your physical surroundings. So you feel like you're in a prison. You just want to travel. You want to get out in the sea. You want to run through the forest. Those type of things. Go to space. But also there's a feeling of being stuck in a conceptual prison. So this is like your words, you're trapped. There's something about your thinking that's not restricting you. You can't get out of it. You keep going round in circles in your thoughts. You have these kind of something going on in your psychology that's restricting you. Or you're not in control of your self-talk, or you can't focus your mind on something. Other things come up. You just start thinking about these things and worrying about things, or you just get distracted by something that's seems more fun. Can't keep your mind on a task. All these things are imprisoning you in some way. So these are other things that people want to self-transcend, that they want to break free from. But as I say, there's healthy and unhealthy ways of becoming something bigger than yourself. And a lot of the madness that's going on now is people just finding stupid things to be the feeling. It's like a deformed version of self-transcending. So they feel by doing certain things or joining certain things or following certain ideas or doing going along with all the nonsense, is they're becoming something greater than themselves. It's that kind of urge to self-transcendence, but it's going off. It's like a deformed version where it's not like a shadow version rather than the real version. And I think that explains a lot of it. So when it seems like people are just doing things that are destructive for themselves, and Freud talks about the death drive. But I think that is the death drive. It's a deformed life drive. It's turned in on itself. It's self-transcendence. It's actually destroying you. But a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, because to create things, you often need to destroy something first. Often, not always. They assume that a lot of people conflate the destruction with the creation. So they think just by destroying things, you've now created something new, which isn't how it works at all. It's like sometimes you need to break things up to make space to create the new thing, yes. But just by simply wrecking things will not create some new thing that you want. It's like a really childish way of looking at it. And I think a lot of the errors people are making in the forms of self-transcendence, quote, that they're engaged in are just destroying themselves in certain ways, but they have this kind of feeling, this little shadow feeling, thinking this is where I need to go to get beyond myself. So it's like kind of backwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sticking feathers in your butt doesn't make you a chicken. I think they said that in Fight Club. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of modern movements, and I won't talk about them on YouTube because probably get banned, but we all know probably what I'm talking about, where, yeah, you try to think yourself into being something you're not. And it can be very, very destructive, can't it? Like quite horrifying, actually.
Here's a way to think about it. There's oh, sorry, on you go.
I just wanted to say, yeah, I like the idea of self-destruction. I like calling it descendance, and I just wanted to talk about, so again on the Descartes thing. I'm not picking on Descartes. I know everyone's going to think I'm being mean to him, but I'm not really. But so going from this top-down approach of pure thought and abstraction downwards, descendants then for me implies that we're going from that place of abstraction that is disconnected from everything, descending into the primordial, into the pre-rational, into the body, getting to know it, getting to know reactivity, our biology, all the bound up energy, all the things that are going on subconsciously that we don't notice, that are shaping the nature of what we're thinking all the time, and then going forth from that point. I think that's the process. I think that's where descendance comes in, because you're descending into the core of your being, and then from that place you're mastering or understanding your biology, understanding your reactivity. And when you see your reactivity, then you begin the process of overcoming it, overcoming those things that you didn't really know that were going on, but are going on. And that's the upward path. There, I just said it. You're climbing the mountain at that point. So you're transcending your biology, your reactive biology. So I think that you're right. I think that a process of self-overcoming or transcendence does require a period of descendance, going downwards, a period of destruction or restructure, whatever you want to call it. So I just throw that in because I like it. I like the way
Definitely,
you're
yeah.
going.
You descend in order to transcend, ascend. Yeah, the whole self-transcendence, healthy version versus self-transcendence, unhealthy version. So like, there's a author, he's a fiction author who writes like old war stuff, I think. But he also wrote some self-help books. His name is Stephen Presley, you know, the guy that wrote War of Art. You know this book?
No, I'm not sure.
It's like a self-help book for artists or whatever, but he's a proper fiction writer as far as I know, and I've heard from real writers that he's actually really good. He's not just a self-help author guy. He's like, he wrote a book on, I think it's the Spartans called Gates of Fire, something like this. It's meant to be good. I haven't read it.
I have read that, actually. I've read that one.
Oh,
I didn't realize it was him. But there you go. Yep.
So he also wrote the book War of Art, which is like a kind of one of the better self-help books 7 years ago, and some follow-ups and that. And then one of the ideas he has, which I'll have to bring this back to transcendence to explain. I'll have to explain something in order to for this to make sense. But he, in the book, War of Art, or the follow-up, there's one called, I think it's like Turning Pro or something, where he talks about these things. And he compares, well, basically says all creative people have to fight something called resistance. And, you know, it's resistance with a capital R. It's kind of like the demon or the devil in the book, the kind of demon or the devil for creative people. So whenever someone is creative and tries to create something, as soon as they try to do it, they get resistance. So it can be like basic resistance, like laziness or procrastination or writer's block, those type of things. So you can be an artist or a scientist or a businessman, whatever it is you're wanting to do. An athlete, can be anything. And you know, when you go, there's some kind of work you have to do, and many times you won't want to do that work, but you have to do it in order to be this thing. So if you're a writer, you have to actually sit down and write at some point. You know, not just read about writing or think about writing. You know, you have to actually do it. You know, if you're an athlete, you have to train. You have to do the things consistently you don't want to do, but you'll get this experience resistance. And as I say, he capitalizes it to make it into to personify it almost. And it can be basic things, as like I was saying, about just making you lazy or writer's block, but it can also be really sneaky, where it'll invent ways for you to do things where you think you're being creative and doing the thing you want to do. You know, it could even be being a mystic or a spiritual teacher. You know, it could be me explicitly becoming awakened and a spiritual teacher. It doesn't have to be. For some people, it would be. But the resistance, what it'll do is it'll trick you. He even uses the word diabolic. It's diabolical. He says that, you know, as if it is a devil. He says it will trick you by getting you to do things that seem like you're doing the creative thing, but you're actually not. So it'll be like a metaphor for the real thing.
Like my
For
Substack.
example,
Yeah.
okay.
I just going, that's
So,
me, man. Fuck.
Well,
Sorry.
for example, he's I don't know if you're, I think you are doing the thing, no?
Yeah, no, I am doing the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you're figured it out. But but like the examples he uses is like a rock star is someone who's living the rock star lifestyle, but they're not actually making any music. You know, they've got the clothes, they're partying and get wasted all the time, but they don't actually make any music. So that's like, he calls this there's a version of resistance he calls shadow careers. I love this idea. And basically a shadow career will be a metaphor for the real career. So you'll get the rock star who's living the rock star lifestyle but he doesn't make any music. You'll get the wannabe writer who works in the publishing industry but never writes the books. You know what I mean? So they do something that makes them feel like they're doing the thing, but they're not really. You know, or they'll get someone who'll go and work as the second hand to some kind of innovator or inventor or something. They'll be like the number two to somebody because but they really want to do that themselves, you know, but they're not doing it, you know. Or they'll be, instead of being an athlete, they become a just sports journalist and write about other athletes, you know, that kind of thing. So this resistance will trick you in different ways to get you to think you're doing the thing that you're really doing, but it will, even if you don't know what it is to do, you want to do, really truly want to do, if you see what is going on in your life, that will be a metaphor for the real thing. So if you find yourself doing something and, you know, it's not working for you, or what is this? What am I really wanting to do? That this is like a shadow career version of that. Resistance also can be things like, before I start writing, I'm going to do this long, perfect morning routine that will get me in the zone for writing. And then you know, the resistance, the trick is it burns all your energy and now you just don't do the thing later. Everyone has done this in some degree, you know. Or just the classic, you're just reading lots of books about how to write and never actually writing. Or Schopenhauer's got a good one where he says all these guys that read too much, all these philosophers that he's writing about at his time, he's saying that they always reading, never to be read. So there's that kind of thing, you know. And one I see all the time now is these personal knowledge management people, you know, the note takers. You know, they have all these apps now, Obsidian and all these apps for note taking. They're just like going mad, taking hundreds of notes on all these hundreds of books and stuff and putting them in these big files, whether physical or on computer, but they're not actually doing anything with them. It's like, I would imagine all those people want to be writers or creators of some kind, but this is like their shadow career version of the real thing, you know? And one of the things Stephen Presley talks about a lot is for artists, it's addictions. They become addicted to something, not necessarily drugs or that, but they become addicted to something. Or if it's like, he said for him, he was playing out a fictional novel in his life rather than writing the novel that he'd always been wanting to do and kept delaying and delaying and delaying. You know? So things between characters and that. You know, you've met these people who are like, everything's like a drama and they're interesting the first few times you meet them, but then they're like years later, they're still doing this thing. They're not really, it's like a wasted, they're creative in some way, but they're wasting it at parties to make people laugh at parties rather than do something, you know? So anyway, so this is shadow careers. So the central idea is it's not just some random thing you're doing. It's a metaphor for the actual thing that's right for you. You know, like for someone who's always wanted to be a scientist, you know, an experimental scientist, say. But they never had the guts to do it, or they just never got around to doing it, but they maybe do some kind of weird hobby thing that's like a shadow version of being a scientist, but it's not real, you know? They have some like childish kind of hobby that they do in the here and there or whatever instead of the real thing, you know.
Sounds like being online would offer ample opportunity for people to go down this path. Do you think?
On being online.
Yeah, particularly these days. Like,
Yeah.
you have social media accounts. You can pretty much pretend to be whatever you want.
They're
and convince
literally a
yourself that you're doing
shadow.
it.
It's literally a shadow career of your life. You know, like it's, you know, people spend a huge amount of effort managing the social media look to project an image of their life for people rather than changing their actual life. You know what I mean? It's like obvious. Everyone knows this, but that's a good example. It's like a shadow career rather than the real career. So like everyone will have a version of this. There's anyone who's of some kind of calling or artistic creative urge for in any kind of form, spiritual, scientific, business, you know, artistic, anything. It will have experienced these things. Very like few people are just have it clean right from the start for you, I suppose. But so or like even like it could even be things like argumentative people could be that the thing that they need to do. People are constantly arguing and nitpicking. It's because they're called to do something. They feel called to do something that involves that kind of attention to detail and judgmental kind of thing in the real activity, but they end up just doing it to their friends and their partners and being a dick. You know what I mean? Maybe they want to be a trial lawyer, but they can't be a trial lawyer, so they just pester people. You know, that kind of thing. So there's loads of versions of this. So when it comes to self-transcendence, the shadow version of this would be to try and it's hard to explain this while allowing you to keep a channel on YouTube. So I'll try.
Yeah.
So like if you're so there's similar words to transcendence that are popular now. That is, in a way, it's transcending yourself because you're going beyond what you actually are to something else. But to me, all of that seems like a shadow version, a shadow career of self-transcendence. Because transcendence, when people do mystical things or they do meditations, often they'll get it's like a feeling of annihilation, or you're surrendered, or however you describe it, where you're being broken apart. You're kind of something, a part of you is being destroyed in some way, but then you break through and you become something bigger. People are mistaking that people are thinking if they do things which are actually destroying them, that then they will break through into the bigger thing, but not necessarily. You're doing the wrong thing, you'll just destroy yourself. So there's that. Also during mystical experiences, transcendence like that, the higher end of transcendence, you are I don't know how to describe this. You're coming. I'm not sure how to explain this for this. I could explain this not on YouTube. Okay, here's another example. You know how in these like another example of shadow way of thinking about shadow careers is, you know how like in these magical rituals people in history and people do now, where they create a metaphor and an analogy for what they want to happen, then they perform that analogy, and then the idea is that sort of makes the real thing happen in the real world. You know what I mean? So there's
chaos.
There's a structure to it,
like that, right?
Yeah. So it's like you make a little metaphor of what you want to happen, and then you perform this thing, and then the idea is that will happen in real life, forever. What people are doing with shadow careers, it's like the opposite of that. It's like you're doing the black magic on yourself. So what you're doing is you're performing a metaphor of the thing you want to do in order to avoid doing the thing you want to do. So it's like bad magic on yourself, and everyone's like, not everyone, but lots of people are doing this. You know, like maybe somebody who wants to have a family is rather than going out and getting their heart broken looking for the one, blah blah blah, and all the stuff that entails, they will get cats. So like collect cats, So people do these things all the time. So but basically, the idea is that destroying your existing self is, in a way, part of the process of self-transcendence, because you're going beyond what you were. You're not happy with what you were in some way, and you're going beyond it. Fine. But simply by destroying it is not the same thing as going beyond it. So that's the first thing. As I was going to say earlier, I was trying to describe earlier, this apparently is during the mystical experiences, often people transcend their body. So they go beyond their body, or they have an out of body experience, or they become part of a greater conscious, wider space, or
forget your body sometimes.
Yes, so you forget the body, you're not limited by it, you break free the limitation of that. So that's very easy to notice that there's a shadow career version of that, where you deny your body like in the material level of it. So there's a spiritual way of denying the body as a tool and a technique to self-transcend. But the shadow version of that is just thinking that you denying the material existence of it in a material way, and thinking that then you can change that, and then that will change everything else. When it's upside down, it's backwards. So one of the related to that is one of the tools humans have for self-transcendence is language. And when language becomes a tool and an end in itself, or when you think, Krzyzewski, you think the words are more real than the things that they refer to, you think you can transcend by either jumbling around the words, changing the definitions of words, or just saying the right words, better words enough times, and then it'll change the things that they refer to. So I wrote on Twitter the other day, this is like your nervous system is upside down, because your nervous system, you're taking in sense, you're automatically sensing your body's automatically sensing things around you. Then that's been abstracted into perceptions that you're aware of objects and things happening around you, and then you abstract that into concepts which you use, which are like rules and similarities you see in what's going around you in order to act better in the world, and then you use them to orientate yourself in the real world where the sensations were coming from in the first place. But what everyone does is what lots of people have now is that they have it backwards, where they start with the words. The words are the main real thing. They won't say it like this, but it's implied in all their behavior that the words are the real thing, and then you change the reality to go with the word. So there's a woman on Twitter who's a linguist who thinks she's really smart.
I saw that.
You know the one?
I think I did. Yeah, go on. You go.
She caught everybody. I was laughing at it from a Krzyzewski point of view, because she's the trap. She actually, in fairness to her, she actually says I can't believe they fell into the trap. Although she didn't really mean it like the way it's a trap. So
it should be meant. Yeah.
Everyone comes in. So for people listening, she said to people, obviously she has a political agenda here with this game on Twitter. But anyway, what she says is, give me a definition of a word that isn't circular. Give me a definition of any word that isn't circular. So she says, what's a chair or something like this? And then people start giving definitions. So she immediately comes up with exceptions to the definition, So you got a horse at one point, and, because you can sit on a horse, 4 legs horse, like this kind of thing. So and people keep finding better definitions and more words at this word chair in order to beat her. But there's always going to be something that she can get out of it, because eventually they just comes back in a circle to you're just having to say a chair is a chair at some point. So you can't you can't win that game. It's a trap. What she doesn't realize why it's a trap. She just says a linguist and is lost in words. A lot of them are.
She's a cunning linguist.
Yeah. So the game, the trick that's happening there is that everybody is starting with words and then reality. So they're treating the words as primary, and then what they refer to as secondary, and they don't even realize they're doing it. So here's a definition of a word. How do you define this? You have to find more words to throw at that word, and if you get the right collection of words, then that's that definition, and then you look at what it refers to. This is what they're all doing. So they're sending definitions. But really, if you want to know what a chair is, you point at fucking chairs. And then eventually you point to 2 things where you're like, kind of chair, kind of not chair. And then that way of looking you do that long enough, you realize that yes, chair is a thing, but it's not defined by, doesn't come from words. It comes from things, and then the words come from the thing. So yes, that's a chair now. So it might be a chair today, but not a chair tomorrow, based on how it's been used then. You know, like it's that's obvious if you start from reality, things around you, and then work up, to concepts. But a linguist, by definition, is almost not going to, because they're love words. That's why they go into it. Not always, obviously. They hate Krzyzewski, by the way. Lots of linguists who should know better. They hate him.
Never get that.
You don't get it. They don't get it because he's talking about their nervous system and all this stuff, and they're like, the rules of language. They're like, it's rules, language rules, and there's like a disembodied thing where the linguistics is somehow separate from the body. Even the embodied linguistics people make that mistake. It's incredible. And they don't like Krzyzewski, I think, because he's not really he's not one of them, although he crosses on it, linguistics, and he's so weird and it's so unique that everyone can find something that he's wrong about their field, you know, because he's so interdisciplinary. But anyway, that game that she played is just would be, if I was an argumentative Twitter type, I would just say, you know, is it your view that words are primary and the things they refer to are secondary? You wouldn't even know what I meant. Not really.
No, probably not. Yeah.
Because the game is find the best definition. Well, if anyone wants the technical terms of this, Krzyzewski calls it intentional and versus extensional orientation. Intentional with an S, not T. Intentional. So that's intentional is when you start with the words. The words are the real thing, and then you look for things that they refer to. The way your kind of nervous system is operating, the way you orientate yourself. Start with the words. And extensional, you know, extensive, is you start with the things and then find the words, the categories for the things, and then you use them to orientate yourself among the things. So that's the way your nervous system works, because as I was saying earlier, you know, from the sensation body and sensations app. So look, Krzyzewski makes a joke somewhere. He says, a dry joke, that the only places you see the place where you see the intentional orientation to life most, where people are, say, the most like false to facts, upside down things, are in mental asylums and in some chairs of philosophy and linguistics. So, or maybe he doesn't say linguistics, I'm probably adding that in. But yeah, so he's like saying that's what crazy people are doing. They think the word's the real thing, and they think something, therefore it's real, and then they follow that train because their nervous system has arranged itself in such a way that it is the real thing to them. You know, they're experiencing the words as the real thing, and then they're wondering why they're mad and can't function, because they're not orientated from the things around them to the words after. So that whole issue is something that plays out in this whole, as I'm calling, shadow careers of transcendence, where the whole argument about what is this word, what is that word, it's solved by pointing at people and saying that's this, that, you know, it's not solved by arguing about the definition of the word with more words. No. You know what I mean?
No.
And even if something is something you can't point at, okay, point at a dream. You can point at other things, you know, like you can, you know, like even feelings are things you can point at, you know, you can yourself, and then you can relate that with other people and things. It's not like it has to be a physical object, you know, like you know, somebody will be thinking that.
You could be more ephemeral. Yeah, it could be more.
But the point is, you're orientating from the things first, then the words. That's the point. It's an that's what Krzyzewski uses the word orientation all the time, and I think it's the best way of saying it, because it's not a bunch of ideas you have. It's how you orientate your nervous system, and one of those ways of doing it is closer to the facts of life than the other. And all, like, a huge half of the culture war is that if you take away if you take away mistaking words for things, and everyone just starts with the things, there'll be disagreements, obviously, about what to do in that. Obviously, there'll be massive disagreements, but this stuff, half of that would disappear.
It would, because people are just arguing definitions and weird shit. I mean,
exactly. Even when they don't even realize they are. They argue the definition, and then they argue judgments about the definitions, and then judgments about the judgments of the definitions. So, like they're totally away from thinking. You just point to stuff and go, that we use the word we use this word to describe that. We use this other word to describe that. There's this one. What about this one? It seems like in the middle. Oh well, in this situation it's that one, in this other situation it's that. Like it's easy. Or this is why they never. No one ever does this.
Yeah.
No. Because and both sides fall for this. It's not like a one-sided thing.
Sure.
Both sides do it in the same way. But anyway, Krzyzewski, read him.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah, she
Science and Sanity. That's the book, by the way, I'm referring to all the time.
It is. Yeah, it's a good book. Not that I've read all of it because I'm too dumb to understand some, but I get the general idea. Yeah, it sounds like to be a linguist, you'd have to be the ultimate midwit. It sounds like the ultimate midwit kind of job where, like, you're one of those people that desperately wants to appear as very profound and clever. You know what I mean? But you just end up looking like a fucking twat. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of like being really knowledgeable about computer programs, but never actually programming anything.
Yeah. There's literally no fucking use for it.
You're not doing anything with it. Yeah. You're just it's. I mean, there are parts of it that are obviously useful and interesting stuff, but that
abstract weird thing. Yeah, I agree. So it's funny you should mention that because like as you say, anything can end up that way easily. Including this kind of stuff. So you can say, I want to self-transcend and I'm going to do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they're just words as well, right? Like, so I guess you always have to be on the lookout because you can fucking trick yourself.
Yeah, I mean, what can you point at? If you said you've been I'm into self-transcendence, okay, what can you point at to what is that? So you could say, if it was real, you could say, on this date, February the 6th.
Yeah.
2014.
This happened to me. I did this and there was that result.
I had this experience that morning. Yeah. And then after that, so it was like incredible. It was out with the normal range of psychology for me and blah, blah, blah. And then after that, I noticed, looking back after a year, that my life changed. Like I found myself doing different things in life. Problems I'd had stopped. Other things I started, things changed. And there's some kind of objective side to it. There was both a subjective side to it and the objective side to it. That's like my kind of orientation in life now, is to look for both subjective and objective. The scientific reductionist materialists are only looking for objective, and the naive mystics and the somatic therapists and all that are only thinking of subjective. Most, not only, but they're way too focused on it. If you feel it, it's true. And in spiritual work, spiritual techniques, it's really bad. People are really bad for just thinking the feelings are a real thing. You had a peak experience, so you think you're enlightened. Well, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
But you should be something you can point at. And what were you doing? Sometimes it just happens to be all spontaneously, but usually somebody's been doing things. You can think you can usually, there's usually negative examples where you can say, oh, I thought that such and such was some kind of awakening, and then I'm just the same person a year later or whatever.
Yeah.
That wasn't. It was just a peak experience. Interesting, fun, good to do, but not the thing. A lot of people get that when on psychedelics. If they're honest with themselves, they'll realize that no, they're not enlightened super being now. They just had some weird sensations. Useful in some ways if you carry on with it and work on it, and a useful tool. But again, people think tools are ends in themselves. It's a kind of Western issue, really. So yeah, I think I've done my best there to explain my idea here without tripping you up.
No, that was good. That was good. I really like that idea because it's something that we all fall prey to. I'd like to read that book. What was his name again? I might put it in the notes for people. The guy with the dark personality thing, how you think you're something when you're not, and you go and that you encapsulate.
Oh, the shadow creators. Yeah, that's Stephen Pressfield.
Steve
He's the author of Gates of Fire, which is the Sparta story, and the books are War of Art and Turning Pro. They're just short books.
Yeah.
He's there's like self-help book. Those two are self-help books, but they're better than the typical self-help book. And there's some definitely useful stuff in them. And shadow careers versus real careers. It's in both of those books, I think. Definitely in Turning Pro anyway. And I just found that really useful because I see it everywhere now. You often see when someone is they're acting out something that isn't the real thing, but it's actually totally natural. This because that's what children do. The mother's cooking, and the little girl is pretending to cook with her stuff beside, looking, copying it. Well, she's not. No one thinks she's really cooking, but and she, there's uses. There's like material uses for that kind of behavior, and practical uses for it, practicing and stuff like that. But it's like the shadow versions are like that kind of analogy, instinctive analogy, narrative behavior. Like story behavior, doing things that are part of a story, playing games and all that. It's all totally natural. Children do it, obviously, and it's something like people are doing that to themselves, but they're an adult and they should be doing the real thing now.
And
the
of
real
course,
thing
the child
might be writing a story. So it's like it's all separate. It's all more intertwined than I'm saying here. But everyone could listen to this. Anyone listening to a podcast like this has some kind of creative thing they're interested in or called to do. And if you look at your life now, there'll be something you're doing that's a shadow version of it. It'll be like you'll be reading books about writing. It's kind of weird if you think about it. You'll be watching sports rather than training in the sport.
I remember one recently. I was struggling with my fitness, and I know you do kickboxing as well. So I was at a kickboxing class, and I'm like, man, I said, is there a good way to train for fitness? Like so I can come here and not get fucked up every time I come in. And he's like, yeah, just train more. And I'm like,
just come in and get fucked up. Exactly, because I was thinking that. I made the mistake recently, even though I know this stuff intellectually, but you just find yourself doing it all the time. Like, I was thinking, I just can't kick as high as I want. Partly it's because I'm older now than when I was, much easier when you're in your 20s to do a high kick than it is in your, let's call it early 40s. And I was thinking, whoa, what do I need to do? I'll ask the coach after what I can do to make my kicks higher. And I know what it is. It's just do slightly higher kicks. Practice them. That's it. Have a plan, though, not just randomly. Let's have a plan and, learn more technique and that, obviously. But at the end of the day, you just have to do the thing. And this is why, like, people do stretching instead of just doing the thing with less effort. They do all these weird stretches and warm-ups that are not the movements you do in the thing. It's crazy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why?
Yeah, totally.
Like, so you stretch out all those bits, and then when I do the thing, I'll be warmed up. Well, why didn't you just do the thing at like 40% and then 60%, and now you're warmed up anyway? Like if you're weightlifting, it's pretty obvious. I'm not a big weightlifter. I mean, I do bits and pieces, obviously, but I'm not like a gym bro type at all. However, it's pretty obvious if you want to warm up for a big lift, you would just do the same lift but lighter. How is this difficult?
Yeah, totally.
But it wasn't obvious to people because people are arguing about this online and they're asking about things to do and all that. It's obvious. It's the same with that for everything. So even self-transcendence, if you don't just sit down and decide to do the thing now to transcend to full enlightenment. A lot of people do, but it doesn't work. You practice. You practice being able to sit down for 5 minutes in the beginning. You practice them for 10 minutes, whatever. You don't. Actually, this is an error people make. They want to become more focused and have less distractions, so they will find some concentration exercise to do to make them better at concentrating. Well, that's what your problem is. Or they'll they want to be better at strategy. They want to be better at dealing with people. So, oh well, that involves strategy. I'll learn chess. No, dealing with people would make you better at dealing with people. Not learning chess. It's not going to translate over. Probably.
No.
I don't know enough about it.
No.
So that would be like a shadow version.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, part of the shadow version is part of it might just be an ego thing, as in I don't need to practice or learn start at the beginning and do the basic stuff. I should just be, that superiority complex. I should just be doing it, be the best anyway. So
I wanted to talk about this.
They want you to start.
Yeah. And the superiority complex is a big thing, right? Because that's the thing that I see all the time. People wanting to be superior in all kinds of ways. And ties into what you're saying. And it's a big element of what we're talking about, like self-transcendence implies that, sure, you're getting better than what you are, but also it's going to make you better than other people, kind of thing, which I think that's a fair enough metric. If you want to be elite at something, then the best way to, become elite is to fucking beat everyone else at whatever you're doing. There's nothing wrong with that. But part of what you're talking about is, this shadow elitism. That's a good way to put it. I see it all the time. I've got like I read Evola and fucking like the words spoke to me, and now I'm an aristocrat of the soul, and the elite class are just there and they don't deserve to be, should be me. And that you could live out an entire fantasy life, like just thinking that you're fucking amazing and that you're superior to everyone else because of your thoughts and the concepts and the books that I read. But I can't take it seriously anymore. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. And yeah, I think it's a huge, huge fucking trap, because like if you just go around like just thinking you're the best, like, and as you say, there's no evidence of this. So you could be, I don't know, like living at home, have no money, have a shit job, or whatever it is. And you could read like a book like something that Evola, he has a couple of books about being an aristocrat of the soul. And, I like Evola. I did like Evola. I don't mind his books, but you could seriously go around thinking, like, just in your head with absolutely no connection to reality whatsoever, no achievements to justify it, no nothing. And you could cultivate like an entire online life. You could have like a fucking statue head thing, and like, just cultivate a huge following, and then like I'm this fucking like overman, and like they're just trying to keep me down, man, all that kind of stuff. They're not elites. I'm the elite. And then everyone who thinks the same way is like amplifying it and fucking liking it. Like, but really, what is really the case is just in front of you all the time. Like it's right there. But look, I've done it myself. I've done that myself. I've imagined myself to be way better at things than I was, particularly when I was young. And it's a real trap. It is a real trap. And the thing, like, being superior, feeling superior is a really sneaky feeling as well. It's a really powerful feeling. You really got to be on, like, really careful of it, I think, because
that's another version of the fake
it
self-transcendence.
is
So people
totally
use the superiority complex to give them a little squirt of feeling that they've transcended
better
themselves somehow by pushing people down. And some people are literally destroying things for other people, tearing things down that other people created to make themselves feel better, but they're not doing anything to raise themselves up. Again, you're seeing that in the culture all the time.
It always happens to me as well. Like every time I put out an article, and I swear to God, I'm really clear. I'm not like a spiritual guy, like, who thinks that, everything's fluffy and the material world isn't real. No, I'm not like that at all. And I don't even make pretensions that I'm that way. Like, I've never fucking even done it. But the comments I get are just inevitably always like that. And I'm always like, oh, fuck's sake, it's not happening again, surely. But they always take the form of like, you know, this argument. So the physiological argument that you're giving, which I try to base it on reality when I put a theory forward. Like I try to have measurements and things usually, and they're like, oh, it just sounds very materialistic to me. I'm like, well, that's because it fucking is. Like, what do you, where else would it be? Where else would it be? What else is there other than fucking what's here? So I think my reaction to one of these people was just like, okay, well, if everything is like consciousness, you know how people say that everything is consciousness. How about I throw you in front of a fucking train, and then we'll see what that consciousness does to you as it roars towards you. But it ties into what you're saying about language as well. So you have the superiority thing. So you're sitting there saying like, well, this guy's a fucking idiot because he doesn't realize everything is consciousness. What a fucking dummy. So you're sitting there acting like you're superior, having done nothing really other than straw man the argument. And then on top of that, what you do is you take some fucking meaningless words that don't have any connection with anything whatsoever, and then sling that as a fucking insult. So I just or a criticism or whatever. It's just so prevalent. It just comes up so much. You know, I really want people to question what I'm saying and to offer counterpoints or points on technical knowledge or whatever it is. But I never get that. I never get that. And I always look for it. I always look for it. But the people that throw fucking rocks at me, it's almost like they're not even after that. They're after something different, you know, like, anyway, just a little bit of a rant there, but yeah, it's really prevalent today, really prevalent. And the drive to have that feeling of superiority is just, it's everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's like spirituality where people talk about being selfless all the time, and then all they end up doing is going around acting like a prick, you know? It's just really fucking strange how the human brain works. Anyway, I don't know what that's got to do with self-transcendence,
Yeah,
other than
some
you
of these
trick
guys
yourself into it, right? Like you can trick yourself so easily. Anyway, sorry, you go on.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of these guys with the
Carried
constant
away.
commenting and criticizing and that, it's like they're running around quickly checking that they are still superior, and that means that they've transcended other people. Oh shit, there's a guy who said something that's quickly knock that down. Oh, good, I am superior.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that. You know, it's like it's a fear thing, you know, rather than not. It seems that they are aggressive when they're in their comments often, but it's like passive aggressive because it's fearful.
It is
based on
passive
fear.
aggressive. Passive aggressive.
Because I mean, really, if
Absolutely.
you're a transcendent being, what the fuck are you doing commenting under anything we do? You know, you know what I mean?
Totally.
You're ruling yourself out by engaging with us. But
Totally.
but like, you know, look at me, I am the elite now. Look at me,
Yeah.
I am the elite.
Listen,
But yeah, many
motherfucker,
people.
there is no fucking path. It's like, all right, okay, fair enough. Well, okay, where did
You know,
how did you get to your fucking computer in the morning, cockhead? Like, you know, like what does this shit even mean? I don't even know what it means anymore. You know?
Another thing related to Korzybski, though, and people thinking words or confusing words with reality, confusing words with things that they refer to, is they forget metaphors or metaphors, and they forget like a metaphor is often like the path, you know, path of life or the spiritual path. They forget it's a metaphor that's like a tool to help you. It's not. It's like a conscious fiction. It's like a deliberate fiction. We know there is an actual path there when you say spiritual path, but you're using the metaphor as a kind of convenient fiction so that people have a way of understanding the structure of what we're talking about, similar to a path. You know, it's a metaphor analogy with a path. But what people happens is they get entranced by the word, bewitched by language. I think Wittgenstein said bewitched by language. I would rather say possessed by words, I think is better, because people really do get possessed by words. And they forget that was just a metaphor, that was just a fiction that we're using as a tool. They forget that, you know, using as a tool to make life better, easier, or to solve the problem. And they start treating it like a hypothesis, like you're actually saying there is a path there. You know what I mean? They don't even realize they do it. They just flip from one to the other between fiction and deliberate fiction and hypothesis. So hypothesis is like you're doing science now. If you're having a hypothesis and trying to demonstrate it, this is not what that is. You know, saying spiritual path. You know, like doing the things like you're doing. If you could use. You know, you could use musical metaphors to talk about to refer to the rhythm of someone's breathing. But if you have an hypothesis about it, then you need to put some tool, attach some adjectives to them and measure things, you know, to see if the structure of reality matches the structure of your hypothesis. You don't just go by the word.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there is no path, so don't worry about breathing. Just fucking don't breathe, and we'll see. You know, it's. Well, you know, as you were saying before, it's not really what they're after. They're not after a constructive discussion, which is what's so funny about it. But yeah, you do need tools.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that phrase people say about if someone's arguing in good faith, you know, like, because you can't be figuring out what it means by in good faith. But whenever you see something written or a comment, you can smell it straight away whether it's in good faith or not. Often you'll get one. Sometimes they're quite long, but often you'll get one at the start.
Long.
They're talking about one thing, and then you know at the end it's just to get back to some other thing. So, like, there was a group I was in, a group I am in online, and a small group about people learning something that I do, and it's not my group. And there's a guy on there who's the hater of the guy running the group. But this guy's his main hater. You know, he was like a big student of his and went to him a lot. And then he fell out with him and disagreed with things. Now he's like the head hater, criticizing everything. He hasn't just gone off and done his own thing, though. He's still there criticizing, you know, that type of guy, showing how he's better than the teacher. So, like, why is he still there if it's so bad? But anyway, he's there doing that all the time. And somebody will talk about something and it's a technical thing. And he will, like, reply. And at the start of the reply, he's talking about the technical thing, but gradually it just becomes more abstract. It gets away from the details of the procedure, and it gets back to, and I, like, in my head I'm like, oh, here he goes, this is going to end with a dig at the teacher. And then right when he gets the ball, that's you're only thinking this because your teacher did it. Like, he did it, you know. The whole thing was about getting to that point. So that's not arguing in good faith. That's like, you have an agenda and you're just starting with what they were talking about in order to get to your agenda. That's like a closed thing. That's not transcendent. Often, like, a real dialogue is an act of transcendence. You're trying to reach further and go beyond your current understanding with someone else. You're both, you know, in good faith means that you're both trying to do that.
Which is what we're doing, right? We're having a dialogue. Yeah, totally. They don't fuck.
Well, you might be. I'm trying to prove my superiority.
Right? You're trying to fucking. There is a fucking self, okay? Fuck's sake! There's a fucking self. All right. Okay.
I thought you lost it on the path.
Yeah, no, exactly. I fucking dropped it. Anyway, just I guess we've taken a direction here where we're slagging people off, but it is related. It's related to all of this. It's related because you can so easily fool yourself. It's really easy. I'm not
speaking specific. Oh, I actually was speaking about one specific
person.
Were. Right? That guy, the guy in that group. Yeah, the guy in that group. Yeah, who has a name.
Well, I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't.
But in general, I've been talking in general, and including myself, by the way, because I mean, all of this is like
completely relevant.
I've been thinking about Krzyzewski. I'm not sure how much you can understand Krzyzewski without already been able to see it from that point of view. I don't know if you can teach the words they're not things thing, because it sounds so obvious and pointless to normal people. Why would you? Nobody thinks the map is the territory, but actually they do in their behavior.
They do, totally.
But they don't think that explicitly, but implicitly they do. And I was thinking, I don't know if you can teach it to someone like that, because you need to kind of already have the feeling for it before to even engage with it. You know, with like something like Krzyzewski, especially the books. I've got it here. It's like a brick. You know, it's like this giant blue thing the size of a packet of paper.
It's huge.
So I don't know how much you can do that, but in general, I've been including myself in these things, and certainly, I mean, you need people as examples, but I just can't. You're more, you're more. What's the word? Suited to, or you're more interested in open conflict with people. I just
Yeah.
don't have the energy for it. I
Look,
just get
as I
I
say,
get too nuanced about it, and it drains me,
yeah,
and I'm thinking about it later and stuff. I'm really pathetic when it comes to stuff like that. You know, like
yeah, yeah,
because it's like you're trying to get the right words and all the nuances. But if I say it like this, and like it's the exact things we were saying earlier. Like I want to say things like and or and put lots of caveats in that, but that's not how arguments on Twitter work. So I just avoid it because I just find it draining. Although I can be an argumentative prick in real life.
yeah, yeah. Look, I never seek it out. It's only when it's thrust upon me that I even bother, which happens every now and then. But yeah, I only do it because I'm a petty son of a bitch. So when I do it, I don't ascribe any like high-minded fucking like I'm here to try to help someone. I'm just acting as a mirror, you know?
There's a comment under
Like,
this video
yeah.
now saying he called himself a son of a bitch, but a bitch is a female dog, and there's no way his mother is canine.
She cannot be a canid. That's impossible.
Yes.
Well, you never know. We do it.
Self-transcendence out of control now.
Yeah.
Well, that is self-transcendence. You started half dog and you've become human, so that's good.
It kind of is. I mean, people want to do that, don't they? They want to. What do they call furries? That's another way to incorrectly self-transcend? Do you think?
Is that what they are? Is that people who think they're dogs?
Yeah, I think they think they're animals, or they identify as an animal.
I thought furries were objects. I thought they were like toys. I didn't realize.
Well, yeah, I think they may well be. Maybe
people.
that's where they got it from, or
Wow.
something like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely thinking words are primary and realities are secondary.
And trying to act it out too. Yeah.
It's not to deny that the person might feel
like a wolf,
close to other things, or I feel like they identify with things and all that. I'm not denying the feeling. See, this is where I'm just saying people can have weird feelings like that and have weird things and all that, but they don't. It doesn't follow that they don't have to pretend that the reality is like that too. They don't have to. They can just say, I am one way like this and another way I feel like this. So what? It's fine. They don't need to, everyone doesn't need to go along with it. And then you don't need to start changing all the material stuff in order to make it go with the feel. Like it doesn't follow like it. That's a logical error, actually, to think that certain things, conclusions follow from it when they don't. But it's like feelings are feelings. If you feel what you want, I don't care. But I'm not gonna turn my nervous system upside down just because that's what they've done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I in doing the Reich series, it's been interesting because he talks about this as well. He talks about this split that we were talking about before about Descartes in particular, about how in Western civilization, and I guess it ties in with the Spengler thing that you're talking about as well, that we have become so disconnected from our bodies, like just so far disconnected that, for example, I think he talks about a mathematician, and this is in his book, God, the Devil, God, Ether, and the Devil, which I recommend everyone should read. That's like my new favorite book of his. And I haven't read it. I didn't read it for like 2 decades or something until the other day. And I'm like, fuck, this is actually pretty good. And he talks about how part of the problem with Western civilization is it's not like we're not being driven by our sensations. So a mathematician is trying to figure out ultimate reality using abstract symbols, and the thing that's driving him are sensations and energy in his body, right? That's what's giving him the drive and the ability to represent that energy in the form of abstract symbols, which is what's happening. But the problem is that the mathematician in this example that he gives doesn't realize that that's what he's doing. So like the truth is there all the time, but he's just not in connection with it at all. So it kind of ties in what you're saying. Like people have feelings, they have all these things that are going on, but they're just so disconnected from their instincts. It's so far away for them that it just gets represented in just these really bizarre ways, and they're just not at all aware of the truth of kind of what's going on in their body, like the way that they're being driven, and they just come up with these really bizarre modes of being that are, you know, that are disconnected from their biology and their nervous system and the way everything's working. And of course, there is.
I mean, I support like big, like crazy self-experimenting with different ways of being, and like mad, like what seemingly mad Frankenstein self-experimenting and shit. If people want to do that, if it's like individuals doing it on their own, blah blah blah, not it's like not a cultural thing or people be made to do it and all that. Even if I find them distasteful, some of them are, you know, interesting, some of them aren't, and some of them are will go somewhere useful and some aren't, and whatever. And so that's not the same thing as going along with all of it, you know. There is healthy ways to do it.
Yeah.
There is ways to do it that does lead to self-transcendence, even if it's weird and distasteful ways to other people. You kind of, and there's things that aren't. You just know it when you see it. It's like that thing, the whole thing about, you know, the judge. What's define pornography? I know it when I see it. You know, define the difference in art. Where does art stop and pornography start? So it's similar like that. It's like that answer is a guy who's orientated towards the things first and the words second. I know it when I see it, because you do. Do you know what I mean? You know when it's just art or it's not. You know, like if it's naked in art, it's one thing, and then if it's porn, you just know. But you can't define that in words. If you try to define that in words, they will just run rings around it. I'm sure there's pro-porn people that do this online. Because everyone's arguing the definitions exactly like that woman with the chair and the, you know, a horse and that. I mean, her thing was funny in a way, but it was these traps are out there all the time in language, and they're not nothing. It's not like, oh, it's just, oh, I thought the map was a territory, or what a dick it was last night. It's like you do these things, and the behavior comes out, and things happen. Things really happen based on these errors, and it fucks everything up. If you, I mean, you literally have whole wars over a few sounds people make from a mouth.
Yeah.
Incredible, really.
It is amazing. Yeah, really amazing.
And you can also convince people not to do things physically aggressive based on words coming out of their mouth, which in their best interest would be to maybe do something to free themselves from other people's tricks. So like, it's not, anyway, it's not nothing.
Yeah. No, it is, you know, I always say language is, I forget my own expression. Like language is not as powerful as people think, but it's more impactful than they can imagine. Like it's kind of like this paradox, because on the one hand, we're saying that, well, words are just sounds, but on the other hand, these sounds can fucking fuck things up for millennia. So it's kind of this weird,
I mean,
weird
we've
thing.
divorced words from actions. We're so used to words not being linked with actions. So like, we're so used to saying, oh, I'm going to do such and such or such and such, and then you don't really do it.
Fuck all.
So like,
they do fuck
in
all.
our lives, the words are one set of things over here, and then the actions are over there. Sometimes they go together, but they don't have to. I mean, if you read the old stuff, you know, like you know, not that even that long ago, really. If you said something, then actions happen. Like you know, like honor cultures and stuff. You can't unsay something. You know, Westerners can go, it's just a joke, or I just said whatever.
Yeah.
Other cultures and in the West at different times, the words are the first stage of an action. They are an action. You know, they're not like they're not separated. It's like the words do things. You know, you're saying something, and now something has happened. It's not separate. You know, there's not that split between theory and practice that we kind of have, because we're so used to our words not meaning anything, and we're so used to being obsessed with the words and not connecting them with the real thing anymore.
Or you could go online on Twitter, do a thread about honor culture and how good it is, and then say, this is what we need to go back to. We need to go back to this. And then, you know, it doesn't fucking matter because nothing fucking happens anyway. So I think that's kind of just what that's all it is. Everything is
But
always
if
just
what
that.
happens, something happens that they want is they get some more followers and they get some retweets.
And of
You know, it's
course,
like
and that's what it's
that's
about.
it's what it's for.
That's what
Yeah.
it's about. So, just on the going back to furries,
I never thought I'd be in
and
this conversation now.
neither.
Now that I know what it is.
Well, you know, this general idea of, I really think this fits into this top-down thing that I'm talking about. This kind of cultural idea that I think, therefore I am. We're thinking, and therefore, what we're doing is we're taking the abstraction and then we're shaping things downward, even if what's downward is not at all, you know, there. um, and you know, in a way, I can see the utility of that. So, as you were talking about before, the utility is mathematics, imposing abstraction on the world, inventions, computers. Like, I kind of get it, right? But when it gets out of control, the top-down approach, so going from the higher centers and trying to subvert the lower centers, shall we say, like, then it creates all sorts of problems. And you know, I wonder that if a big element of self-transcendence is therefore mastering, yeah, it ties into the reactivity thing that I was talking about maybe a couple of weeks ago. That a lot of the problem is if you're not using language in a very pure way, if you're abstracting and you're using it to build a steam engine, fine, because that's something that, okay, it's connected to reality. But this tendency can be taken too far the other way. So you can then think, well, it built a fucking steam engine, so why can't I be a parrot? You know, like that's the way things work, isn't it? But because we have such weird cultures and quite deviant biology, I would say, for whatever reason, something odd going on with humans and the way they are. This, you know, it comes up in all sorts of bizarre ways. This thinking is really strange. So you have this substrate of reactivity of physiology that's giving rise to all these really bizarre abstractions, and because our culture encourages abstraction and we think we are abstraction, it's going in all sorts of bizarre, like really bizarre ways that just don't make any sense. So I wonder, again, doing this whole thing on Reich, his whole thing was about descendants, for example. So not just Reich, but I guess other body people as well. It was about getting away from that, and then getting into the body, noticing the body. I know I shit canned it last week, but this idea of trauma, I guess what they call trauma in psychoanalytic circles, which are just all these fucked things that happen. And because we're so disconnected from our bodies, we can't process trauma. So all these energies and, you know, getting bullied in the schoolyard because you're a fat nerd, or, you know, whatever's going to happen in your life, it gets all bound up in your body, and your fucking dad used to beat you up or whatever it was, and you develop this kind of really strange, abnormal musculature and physiology and way of breathing. Your nervous system has hit this strange homeostasis where it's very fucking wound up all the time. And, you know, then you have your thoughts, and those are culturally influenced by all these different fucking other weirdos that have come before you and that are around you at the moment. So I'm going to be a parrot. I feel like I'm a parrot. That's what I'm going to be. So I'm going to dress up like a parrot with my girlfriend, who's some other fucking weird animal, and we're just going to live together and live this life. But the way I see it is, these people are just highly neurotic because they're just completely out of their body, or they're not out of it, but they don't understand what's going on underneath. And so this process of descendance, and I'm using that as an example because it's what we all do, at least before we do body work. That's the way we all approach the world. It's getting rid of that and dealing with all these different ways that experience and and how would you say, and being formed by our ecology is bound up in our bodies, like in the form of tension, in the form of bad posture, in the form of breathing not working properly, whatever it is, all the strange things that go on. And so in working with the body, so maybe expanding the thoracic cavity, slowing down breathing, fixing up posture, fixing up all these physiological systems, going away from the upper bit, the abstraction and the language, the bit that we think all the time, and we think ourselves being this and that, and we just need a perfect theory, and then I'll overcome myself because I'll have the right set of words and the right beliefs. It's discarding all of that shit and then leaving it over there for a little while and just getting into the body, feeling the body, trying to make the homeostatic response in the nervous system vibrant and pulse properly and kind of function properly. Try to put it all together. Try to do what you do, like, and then if you're going to start working with words, taking the words and connecting it to tangible things, trying to understand what, you know, the world of the kinesthetic. So we go from maybe what Descartes originally said. So he obviously was famous for saying, I think, therefore I am, which is the argument I'm taking, is that that's not the total truth. So what we could extend that to is we could say, how we could say, I feel, I vibrate, I breathe, I you know, I have sensations, and I think, therefore I am. So you're going from this very limited Western approach to this more inclusive, total organismic approach, shall we say. And anyone that I know that's undergone that process, so that descendance, which is probably more relevant way to call it than a transcendence or a rising up, or however you want to put it. I think that from that place, that's the key. That's the first thing that people need to do. You need to get back to that place, that basic command of the physiology and all those different things. Try to straighten yourself out. And from there, then you can start thinking about, you know, self-overcoming or self-transcendence and all these other things, and what that really means. I think that without the descendants part, then you're pissing in the wind a little bit. You're pissing in the wind. So I really feel that, well, I know, actually, I'm not going to say I feel, because I fucking know it, because I see it all the time. If you don't have the connection with the body, then you'll just get into trouble, because you're kind of missing such a big part of the totality of everything that's going on. So I just bring it back to the matter of, you know, that very abstract use of language, people thinking themselves that they're an identity, people thinking that they are literal thought, like, you know, like that cultural habit that we have. That in itself is something to be overcome, I believe. That descendance is the first step to you know, going somewhere higher, I think. But you know, yeah, I'm just not sure if people, you know, how much people get this. And in my essays and writing, I've really been trying to drive this home, and I'm trying to find easy ways to express it, try and like make it clear. Because I've been a word cell too, so I'm not like totally. It's not like I've always just perfect. Like you know, the only reason I know this is because I was a word cell, like going around reading books and like just like, oh, yes, fascinating, yes. You know, I get all these new theories, and I thought it was wonderful. And then as soon as I started working with the body, you know, what you were saying before about reading Science and Sanity, like a normal person wouldn't get it, because they think, well, you're not going to eat the menu at the restaurant. That, you know, who does that? it's not until you get in contact with the body that these things just become incredibly obvious, that that's what's actually going on underneath everything. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this incoherent rant is that the first step in self-transcendence, I believe, for a Westerner needs to be some kind of descendance. So going into the body, and then from that point, working your way upwards. So taking a bottom-up approach to life. And I think once you do it, you start realizing that from a personal point of view, all these things you were describing, living out these, professions in your imagination, or whatever it is, they tend to just kind of dissipate and go away, and you just you don't really suffer so much from it. It still happens, but because you're very aware of your body and what's going on and everything that's driving you, it seems to open up this kind of realm of creative energy, shall we say. All the energy that was bound up before and you weren't aware of, all of a sudden that becomes available to you, which means that rather than being reactive all the time, then you have access to this reservoir of biological energy, which then you can go and apply to things tangibly. And because you understand the truth of what abstraction is, you're less inclined to get fucked up by it. Like you'll get momentarily enamored by it. You might get frustrated in an argument or at work or some other thing like this, but you tend not to go on a months or years long odyssey of being bamboozled by some kind of language or ideology. I think it's less likely. So yeah, I guess just as my final words, the key is descendants is the key first up. I firmly believe that. And then, freeing up those energies, those bound energies, starting to get an idea of reactivity. then who knows? Then maybe you can go and do a religious thing or a philosophical thing, and it will take on new dimensions that you never really had any idea of before. So that's how I'll finish.
Yeah, I agree with the descendant thing. Yeah, as the first step for definite, because the way you're describing it is using it as the tool or it's the path. The path down, the path leads down in order to lead up.
Don't say it.
But this is like an error that the scientific materialist types make, the reductionist types, is because they keep going down. So science works by descending, breaking into those parts, and the reductionist thing does has lots of practical results by descending. But that's what they keep doing. They keep smaller particles, smaller bits of those particles. They keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like as if all the truth and the real stuff is down there somewhere.
Yeah.
Rather than that just being one level of things that's happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is which is the obvious reality of what's happening. And you have to do some weird mental thing to think that it's all really just that, really just molecules or whatever it is. So they descend as a tool, and then the tool becomes an end in itself, and the means become more important than the end. Whereas like original science, it's all very practical. They're figuring things out well, actually it's not, depends what you mean by practical. A lot of it was trying to highly mystical, but even the mysticism was magic, and the magic was practical. So like it's really a different way of thinking about it. Descartes obviously it's different in those times. Those people are like he was a soldier and all these other things. So to do mind thought experiments and stuff, it's like a different context they're doing them in than the typical person downstream of that who has a sort of debauched version of that, and they don't have all the other philosophical awareness, all the just that physical context that people a few hundred years ago had that we don't really have now, before everything became infatuated with words by real thinkers who had real lives as well. They really did things. They're like a lot of them were did really physical things too.
Just on that, I'm not
Uh,
qualified to have a go at the guy. I'm just using him because, you know, that's kind of where I believe it comes from. But yeah, like from what I know of it,
No,
yeah,
neither me.
yeah,
To
gotta
be honest,
realize,
I'm
yeah,
more interested in the mathematics thing, but that's I'm getting from
yeah,
Spengler. So,
yeah, yeah,
like, because there's a story. I think it's Descartes, but it might be another one of the mathematicians around there. Is they thought of the coordinate? He thought of the coordinate system because he was lying in bed and he was looking at a flat. Like before this, the Greek way of the Greek geometry was embodied. You know, it was like it would only if you were sitting with a pen and paper drawing it, the geometry had to make sense drawing it on a pen and paper, you know, looking at the things around you, you know. So
mm,
like it was very everything was tied back to there, the way they worked and the way they did the way they worked things out in terms of number was always tied back to this physical embodied place.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and then when they reached a point where it was no longer embodied, it seemed to get really irrational. It became like a taboo. You know, they just
yeah,
like, no, that's not good. They ignore that. Whereas the Western one just fucking grabbed that and ran with it. You know. So anyway, like the cars thing was apparently, I think it's him. Any mathematicians listening, if that is if that's a possibility, let us know. But I think he was looking at a fly on the ceiling of this bedroom. He's lying in bed. He was looking at a fly above him, and the fly was walking around on the roof in different areas, or flying around in different places. And he was imagining it in 4 quadrants, and then it's over here, and you could count numbers. Which part of the room is it in? You know, you could count numbers up here and numbers down there and to the side, and then you suddenly
mm,
have a graph system, and then from that you can just have numbers that are completely separated from any kind of. They're just completely abstract now.
mm,
So relationships among themselves rather than have to be tied to the body. And it's an interesting metaphor that itself. It's
yeah,
looking
yeah,
up at the roof. You know, it's already obstructed up out, whereas the Greeks were looking down at the ground. You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so so like again, it's this everything is really embodied and everything's really psychophysical. I don't like saying embodied too much because everyone has the wrong idea of that now. Oh, just feel and sense things and everything will be good.
Mm,
And that's our different approach to Reich and stuff as well, which a lot of the Reichian guys make the mistake of, is that the tool of Reich becomes an end in itself. So the feeling and experiencing the sensations and the emotions and that becomes the thing,
yeah,
and then you're just meant to express all that more, which I don't think is Reich's thing at all. It's like that was a tool for
totally.
based on
Yeah,
based on his
yeah.
concepts and his techniques or whatever. It was a
And
tool for
just on that,
getting rid of the problems.
they're obsessed with trauma now. Just everything is about trauma, which ties into that, you know, that kind of gooey thing about, you know, oh, you know, everything's about being fucking broken and just that whole it's icky. It's icky when you look into it. It's a bit yuck. But anyway, sorry, I just thought I'd mention that because
It's all
yeah,
just a way
part of
of
it, right?
they've gone the other
Yeah,
extreme. So like
yeah,
the post Western Enlightenment stuff about where it got too abstract and lost in theories and stuff like that. They just went to the other extreme, and now they're just lost in the swamp of feelings and sensations and stuff like that. It's like it reminds me of it's just that pendulum swings. People they just swing the pendulum the opposite direction. It's like
yeah,
an
yeah,
automated thing. It's not even conscious. It's like similar to how the people got fed up with the problems from public schools because they were too strict and disciplined and authoritarian and the hierarchy between teacher and students and all that. So they just flipped all these crazy free schools where they just let the child do anything they want, with no
mm,
control, and the child
mm.
knows inside them, the education's in them, they just need to let it out. All total
Fucking
moronic as
hell.
well. It's just stupid. So they had all these experimental ones were just extreme, and it's obvious this is just like the pendulum swings back and forward, and a lot of these somatic and therapist types,
It's been
they were
painful
just swinging it
sorting through it.
the free way. They
Yeah.
think if you just let it all out, everything will be free and everything will work like that. It's
Yeah.
I was used to be like this, so this is. I mean, I know it, so I know all the things they're going to say.
Yeah.
I know why they're saying it because of the feelings are so intense and stuff. But eventually, you're just like, nah, it's all this thinking apparatus in your brain evolved for a reason. A
Yeah.
lot of those people are just lazy and they don't want to think because it's hard, and addicted to feelings, to pleasurable feelings. It's
Good
like,
feelings. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I tweeted the other day that
I saw that. Yeah, I saw
somatic
that.
therapy